Frisco's Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
There are now 17 states supporting a lawsuit filed by the state of Texas before the Supreme Court, asking the court to just straight up disenfranchise the voters of 4 other states because those voters didn't vote for who they wanted them to vote for. The suit is being spearheaded by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a man who fired whistleblowers in his office who came forward with allegations he did favors for a political donor and who has been under indictment for security fraud for 5 years ago. The Paxton suit is now backed by the President of the United States and 17 Republican attorneys general. Republican Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana has also emailed every single one of his Republican colleagues with the subject heading, time-sensitive request from President Trump asking them to sign on to an amicus brief too. Trump himself has now filed in support. Now, let me be clear. This suit has no chance in hell of winning. But it is as brazen an assault on the very nature of our union by elected officials as I have ever seen in my life. George Conway, an extremely prominent legal conservative, someone the Trump administration considered for Solicitor General, described it as crazy.
This is the most insane thing yet. It's absurd and an embarrassment. And for a public official, let alone any lawyer, let alone any member of the Supreme Court bar, bring this lawsuit is atrocious.
All 4 states targeted by this absurd lawsuit are swing states that narrowly went for Biden: Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those states have to file their opposition to the suit with the Supreme Court by tomorrow afternoon, and the Attorney General of one of those states, state of Michigan, Dana Nessel, joins me now. First, I guess, Attorney General, explain to us what is this suit and how seriously we should take it.
I almost don't know how to describe whatever this lawsuit is because it's so insane. And it's insulting, quite honestly, to have the state of Texas come in to my state, Michigan, and to try to overturn the results where nearly 155,000 Michigan voters voted for President-elect Biden over President Trump, and to now say that you want to come in and intervene in our state's elections, it's outrageous. I don't believe that it's going to be granted, but just the mere effort to do this, I think, is beneath the dignity of the Department of Attorney General in Texas. I feel bad for the taxpayers who have to finance this. And honestly, I'm ashamed of all the Republican AGs that decided to sign on to this effort.
I couldn't help but notice, I was going through the filing, which I couldn't help but notice that, they have these, they don't like the way you ran your elections. Really, they don't like the outcome. But one couldn't help but notice that, say, the state of North Carolina is not being sued, even though they made changes to how they were dealing with voting in a pandemic. The state of Texas made changes to how they were voting in a pandemic. It seems pretty clear what this is about. Yeah,
well, I don't really care for the way that Texas ran their elections. I thought it was outrageous that they allowed for only one drop box per county. Travis County, a population of 1.27 million people. I mean, clearly an attempt to disenfranchise minority voters. But you didn't see Michigan suing the state of Texas, did you? Because that would have been wrong. And I can't even imagine what kind of precedent it would set to allow states to sue other states when they don't like the outcome of their elections. But what's even more outrageous is that, for instance, our state house remained in Republican hands. Why are they not suing about that situation? I mean, why is it only whatever happened at the top of the ticket? Because if there was fraud at the top of the ticket, how come that didn't extend to the other offices that were being voted on the same ballots?
Do you have, it was striking to me to watch the two sitting senators from Georgia who are in runoffs because of the actions of the voters on the same election endorse an effort by other states to throw their constituents' votes out. That happened. Okay, Purdue and Loeffler have backed this. Do you have Michigan Republicans who are supporting the effort of other states to throw out your state's votes?
If they have, I haven't yet seen that. But, I would caution, of course, anybody in my state to be careful. If they want to see the results of our election overturned, why not next time? Why doesn't California sue us if we happen to vote for a Republican? Why doesn't New York sue us or Massachusetts? I mean, where does this end, really? Our state regulates time, place, and manner for our elections. These same claims have been heard over and over and over in our state and federal courts. The Trump campaign has lost each and every time.
I'm trying to find I'm trying to communicate to people how wildly anomalous this is. I mean, there's original jurisdiction in the Supreme Court for contests between states, and states do have disputes. I mean, there was a famous case that went to the Supreme Court between New York and New Jersey over who owned Ellis Island, right? That's the kind of thing. Like, is there any precedent for this kind of suit that is now being undertaken by 17 states and joined by the president?
No, there isn't. As you indicated, sometimes there are border disputes, water rights disputes, although those are very rare. But no, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know that I've talked to anyone who has seen anything like this before. It is so incredibly outrageous. And I will say this directly to General Paxton, if he's watching. You know who voted for you in Michigan, General Paxton? No one. Literally no one. So stay in your lane and, stick to trying to disenfranchise voters in your own state. Don't come to mine.
It is Thursday, the 10th of December of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. And yes, I'm still bereft in getting recipes up on each of these daily specials, but I assure you I will soon. Been a little inundated with some other, real life responsibilities, plus other responsibilities to the radio station in general. Taking a bit of my time and concentration, so I apologize. Why I didn't have them up in the very beginning, I have no idea. Just whatever. Okay. So how was your night? You got through it, so now we have another day ahead of us. And if it's Thursday, it means I think that Joe Biden has won being president again. It's Groundhog Day. Yeah, we got the Texas AG, as we spoke at the top there, with 17 states, Republican AGs, going to the Supreme Court to nullify an election. Well, I would say that they're, slave states to the cult. Slaves to the cult? Well, they could be slave states, eh? Surprisingly, when you look at the map of the 17 who are basically declaring civil war on the United States. Yeah. Now, you might argue, well, Montana wasn't a slave state. Well, I think if you looked it up, they weren't a slave state, but they weren't necessarily welcoming to black people now, were they? Still aren't. Fancy that. So what is this about? Well, it's about a number of things. It's about, well, maybe the 13th Amendment and the right to vote for black people. They thought that they had figured it out in Reconstruction with really just lynching and all sorts of things, and then these god-awful liberals with their morality had to come in there and mess up the game. Because, you know, in life there's winners and losers. There's slave owners, and then there are slaves. You can't disrupt the natural order. Yeah, you can. That's why we became a representative democracy, and to create a better union. Not that we're static. This is it. This is the most perfect that we can get. Slavers and slaves, that's the most perfect that we're going to get? No. We had some backward thinkers back in the day, and they still exist now, and they're still fighting the same fight. To have physical dominion over another human being to the point that you don't have to pay them, but you can beat them and work them to death. Because in their small brains, that's the natural order of things? No, it is not. And why coddle that? Why reach across the aisle and try to make amends with that? Look, I'm sorry. If I'm sitting in a circle with a bunch of cannibals, I'm not going to be the meal. And I'm certainly not going to take part in the meal because there's a line in the sand. All right? And I really don't think I'm going to change those cannibals' minds with some sort of argument and a purity test. No, I'm not going to negotiate with that. Excuse me. So, this is what we're up against. Republican zombies want to eat our brains, and it is imperative we don't let them. So maybe we might have to do some drastic measures. Maybe we need to put a clamp down on right-wing propaganda. You know, the Fairness Doctrine did a pretty good job. Yeah, we still had idiots like Dan Smoot. Look him up. That guy was a madman. Had a nice tonal voice for radio and TV. But this guy was a bircher. I mean, he was out of his brain. Yeah, Dan Smoot, S-M-O-O-T. Look it up. Yeah. So, but they had to balance it out. Of course, we didn't balance it out with having Che Guevara having a radio and TV show. No. Come on. This is what's cracking me up. Joe Biden is some sort of commie. Joe Biden and his son Hunter are the corrupt family. We got to look at their business dealings. When you got the Trump kids, the most corrupt political family in American history, and they want to go after Joe's only son, his surviving son. Because, yeah, it's about Hunter and his Chinese business dealings. Come on. How many patents and business dealings does Ivanka have that we keep hearing about? But it's like, oh, well, you know, she's just got some sweatshop labor doing her shitty scarves. No biggie. Oh, she's just taking patent on coffins and voting machines. What's up with that? And they're going to look at Hunter Biden. Russia is officially, and now Vlad's, being a little coy. Because, he knows that Don still owes Vlad big time. But it's getting pretty official because official Russia media is saying, yeah, well, we can just give Trump some asylum. We don't have an extradition treaty with the United States. We grant him asylum, and they can't come after him for the crimes he's committed. And they know the crimes he's committed. They put him there to commit the crimes. Washington Post came out and said that, we better wake up to the fact that Vlad has declared asymmetrical warfare on the United States. And I'm like, well, they declared war on the United States in 2014. I'm glad the Washington Post has finally caught up. But, it's a little, 6 years. 6. World War II was ended faster after we got into it, granted, but still. So now we got to wait another 4 years to go through these battles till we get our D-Day and kick their ass. Please. We've been fighting them all along with no help from Facebook. And yeah, I would like to see Facebook broke up because I have a certain, personal animosity against them now. Everything that you can do on Facebook, we could have done on MySpace. Some people are still trying. What about Tribe? Anybody remember Tribe? Yeah, well, everybody was living in the Wild West back in the day, weren't we? Hey, what's on the rest of the menu here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? Well, of course, we did allude to Ken Paxton. 5-year indictment for securities fraud. And he's like firing whistleblowers for blowing the whistle on his corruption. He's angling for a pardon. And I would suspect that the 17 other states latching on to this frivolous lawsuit there's somebody looking for pardons in that mix too. All right, well, you got a guy who was installed by Vlad in the Oval Office. He's whining about how can we let an illegitimate president run this country. And I'm thinking, you've been running it for 8 years. What are you talking about? Projecting again, Donnie? Yes, he is. Okay, and people are going to take advantage of that. Look at Ken Paxton. It's so brazen. All righty. On the rest of the menu, a member of the neo-Nazi group Atomwaffen Division, who threatened journalists on both coasts, was sentenced to federal prison. I hope they don't put him in a cell block with a bunch of other Nazis. A jury convicted the leader of an Illinois anti-government militia group in the Minnesota mosque bombing. There used to be a time where that might have been big news. And U.S. District Judge Emmet Sullivan said he was leaning against dismissing the Flynn case before Trump's pardon blew it all up. After the break, we moved to the chef's table, speaking of Russia, where Russia conducted sweeping drills of its strategic nuclear forces that featured several practice missile launches. And a Russian citizen was charged with espionage in Denmark. We already know what the jokes are, so we'll get to them in just a bit. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon site. And if you've heard this before, I apologize. It's the block of time where we do this, so I'm going to do it. But if you could, please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Those who have already done so have sent us about the equivalent of what an espresso-type coffee drink would cost once a month, and some others have upped their monthly contribution by a considerable amount, and thank you for doing so. Those of you who are able to, if you could, send the amount of what you might have spent on an espresso-type coffee drink when one could do that with impunity, we are able to stretch those dollars and pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting because apparently this fascism isn't just going to turn off like a spigot. Nope, we're going to be in a battle for quite some time. And we have a civic duty here at Netroots Radio to fight that with all we have. And what do we have? Well, you know, they say the pen is mightier than the sword. Maybe the microphone is even mightier, as evidenced by one Rush Limbaugh, that hateful bastard. They're in it for the money, and in the process, hey, fascism, money, goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Yes, it does, is the very definition of it. So we are arrayed against that. We're not in it for the money, but it takes some money to pay our bills and keep the machinery working, all right? Well-oiled, as they say. And we've been able to do that for almost 10 years because of your generosity. And we thank you truly from the bottom of our hearts for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Tom takes care of that, and he made it simple. All you have to do is go to @NetrootsRadio. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and now Facebook again until they tell me I can't. I'm sure I'm gonna say something that will offend, I don't know, a seditious, treason, mobbed up mobster type. And they'll tell Facebook, hey, he threatened us with the rule of law. No, I didn't threaten you with the rule of law. I threatened you with the idea of the rule of law. Please. Who am I? Anyway, I do post the show notes and links diary on social media wherever I can. And you can also follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Michael Kudzelman. An Arizona man who joined other members of a neo-Nazi group in a coordinated campaign to threaten and harass journalists, activists, and other targets on both U.S. coasts was sentenced yesterday, Wednesday, to 16 months in federal prison. That's all. Wow. Okay. Johnny Roman Garza, age 21, expressed remorse before a federal judge in Seattle handed down the sentence, which was roughly half the length, I would expect, of the term recommended by prosecutors and a probation officer. Garza pleaded guilty in September to conspiring with other members of the neo-Nazi group Atomwaffen Division to deliver threatening messages to journalists' homes and other places in the U.S. On a Jewish journalist's bedroom window, Garza affixed a poster that depicted a man in a skull mask holding a Molotov cocktail in front of a burning home. The poster included the journalist's name and home address. In Garza's words, the plot was designed to have them all wake up one morning and find themselves terrorized by targeted propaganda, a prosecutor wrote in a court filing. On the same January day as his visit to the Jewish editor's home, Garza also stopped by a Phoenix apartment complex where a member of the Arizona Association of Black Journalists lived, but he couldn't find a place to leave a poster. Garza said he was in a time of darkness and isolation. Oh, really? That made it easier for rebellious and resentful influences to take hold of his life. Really? You know, sometimes people like to find a flower and maybe meditate on it, blooming and unblooming in an 8-count breath to calm the heart, mind, and soul. That was available for you. But no, darkness and isolation, yes. The next step is fascism. More than a dozen people linked to Atomwaffen, or an offshoot called Krieg, have been charged with crimes in federal court since the group's formation in 2016. Atomwaffen has been linked to several killings, including the May 2017 shooting deaths of 2 men at an apartment in Tampa, Florida, and the 2018 killing in January of a University of Pennsylvania student in California. In Seattle, the judge said he believes Garza is genuinely remorseful. He said he also factored Garza's youth and turbulent childhood into his decision to depart from sentencing guidelines that recommended 33 months. I know people in my own family have served more than 33 months for a minor pot conviction. So please, let's get real here. Kroninger did not mention Donald Trump by name, but said it has been troubling to see officials at the highest levels of our government refer to journalists as enemies of the state. And that was the district judge, by the way. Referring to journalism and the press and media as fake news enables people who are vulnerable to suggestions like this, very young people, that this kind of conduct is appropriate. Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Wood said many members of the community that Garza targeted have lost faith in the principle articulated by Martin Luther King Jr. that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. How terrifying that must have been, Wood said. How exhausting it must feel not to be safe in one's home. You know, sort of like the data scientist in Florida when a fascist governor sent his Gestapo, to terrorize her over having data sciencing. Defense attorney Seth Apfel said the case tested him personally on a lot of levels because he is Jewish, married to a black woman, and has been a victim of anti-Semitism. But he said Garza has made a complete and sincere change in his life. Garza not just disavowed the views that he had, but really embraced a new way of being. Well, how about turning over evidence about your cohorts trying to kill people? Apfel urged the judge to spare Garza from prison, but the judge ruled out a sentence of probation, saying he wanted to avoid possible disparities in the punishment that Garza's co-defendants could face. Well, good. The court did not immediately set a date for Garza to report to prison. Those ever-present anonymous worker bees, this time at the Associated Press, bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A jury on Wednesday yesterday convicted the leader of an Illinois anti-government militia group of several civil rights and hate crime charges in the 2017 bombing of a Minnesota mosque. Prosecutors outlined 49-year-old Michael Hari's hatred for Muslims as his motivation for the bombing during the trial, citing anti-Islam excerpts from Hari's manifesto known as the White Rabbit Handbook, named after his militia group, the White Rabbits. Oh, good. Prosecutors presented evidence to jurors that included phone records and testimony of federal investigators who tracked Harry down to Clarence, Illinois, a rural community about 120 miles south of Chicago, where Harry and 2 co-defendants lived after a 7-month investigation. The bombing took place in August 5th of 2017, when the pipe bomb exploded in the imam's office as worshipers gathered for early morning prayers. No one was hurt in the explosion, though community members were shaken by the incident, and the mosque's executive director testified last month that it has led to diminished attendance due to fear, which is what terror hopes to accomplish. Defense attorneys argued that prosecutors failed to produce forensic evidence putting Hari at the suburban Minneapolis mosque on the day of the attack and attempted to discredit his co-defendants with what they said were inconsistencies in their testimony. Hari refused to testify in his own defense. Now, prosecutors refuted the defense's claims, citing Hari's past as, wait for it, a former sheriff's deputy that investigated crimes as how he knew how not to leave forensic evidence behind. Sarah N. Lynch of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal judge said he had been leaning towards denying a Justice Department request to drop the criminal case against former National Security Advisor and traitor, not just in this reporter's opinion, Michael Flynn, but was forced to dismiss it after Donald Trump pardoned him. In a 43-page opinion, U.S. District Judge Emmet Sullivan said that while he was required by law to throw out the case, he was not persuaded by many of the arguments that prosecutors previously made in urging him to dismiss it. The court finds both stated rationales dubious, to say the least, arguably overcoming the strong presumption of regularity that usually attaches to prosecutorial decisions, Sullivan wrote. A retired Army general, Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about interactions he had with Russia's ambassador to the United States in the weeks leading up to Trump's inauguration in January of 2017. He later tapped Sidney Powell, yes, Kraken Sidney Powell, an attorney pursuing so far unsuccessful attempts to overturn the election in Trump's favor, and sought to withdraw the plea on the grounds that prosecutors violated his rights and duped him into a plea deal. Duped him. The only dupe is, well, we know who the dupe is here. His sentencing was deferred several times. In May, Attorney General William Barr abruptly intervened in the case and ordered the Justice Department to reverse course and dismiss the charge. Prosecutors argued that Flynn's statements to the FBI in his interview were not material, that Flynn had a faulty memory, and that they no longer felt they had enough evidence for a conviction. How convenient. Sullivan skewered those arguments in his opinion, saying he felt the Justice Department's claims did not meet the legal standard for him to dismiss the case. Asserting factual bases that are irrelevant to the legal standard, failing to explain the government's disavowal of evidence in the record in the case, citing evidence that lacks probative value, failing to take into account the nature of Mr. Flynn's position and his responsibilities, and failing to address powerful evidence available to the government likely do not meet this standard, he wrote. Indeed. All right, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again. From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Much like modern humans, the Neanderthals roamed widely throughout Europe. We know this because they left behind extensive evidence, usually bones or tools. But their cousins, the Denisovans, are more mysterious. Until recently, they were conclusively linked only to a single cave in southern Siberia called Denisova Cave, which lies between Kazakhstan and Mongolia. In that cave, scientists had found a finger bone, 3 teeth, and a piece of skull, which tipped them off to the existence of a whole new lineage of ancient human. Now scientists have uncovered more of the range of the Denisovans, says Diendo Masilani of the Max Planck Institute in Germany. His team turned up evidence the ancient humans occupied a high mountain cave on the Tibetan plateau called Baishia Cave.
The cave belongs to monks, and monks think that it's a very holy place.
In fact, a monk found a piece of jawbone there in 1980, which has been tenuously linked to the Denisovans. But Masilani and his team have now unearthed more conclusive evidence by sifting through cave sediments and sequencing the genetic evidence the Denisovans left behind.
Body decay or people just being there on the site, like bleeding there or pooping, peeing there, they could left their DNA.
The DNA appears in layers, suggesting the Denisovans inhabited the cave as far back as 100,000 years ago, as well as at 60,000 years ago, and perhaps even as recently as 45,000 years ago, meaning the Denisovans might have overlapped in this region with modern humans. The results appear in the journal Science. Masilani says this method could enable more Denisovan detective work too.
There's like so many caves when we have evidence of human activity, but we don't have hominin remain. So if we can exploit the sediment, we can actually start to track down in the sediment the Denisova DNA.
Denisovans live on today in the genomes of some modern-day humans from the South Pacific. Further genetic work like this might give scientists more clues where early Homo sapiens first met and mixed with the elusive Denisovans. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Will violence play a part in American elections?
I'm Tom Harbin, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In Georgia, there have been numerous threats made against election officials and their families, officials who have attested to the accuracy of the presidential election results, including the chief election officer, Gabriel Sterling, and Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, who we note are Republicans and supporters of Trump in the election. In response to the threats, Sterling said that the president needed to step up and say, "Stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to get shot. Someone is going to get killed. It is not right." A Trump campaign spokesman in response said, "No one should engage in threats or violence, and if that has happened, we condemn that fully." Mr. Sterling said that for him, the straw that broke the camel's back was a threat against a 20-year-old contractor for a voting systems company who had been targeted by someone who hung a noose and declared that the worker should be hung for treason. "I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this," said Sterling. "And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike should have that same level of anger." He continued, "Elections are the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this."
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1855. That was the day that Haymarket martyr August Spies was born. He immigrated to America from Germany in 1872 and became involved in the Chicago labor movement while working as an upholsterer. The Panic of 1873 and the Great Strikes of 1877 radicalized Spies. He soon joined the Socialist Labor Party, but left over the issue of electoral politics. He and others favored revolutionary action instead, and threw their weight to the emerging anarcho-syndicalist movement. Spies and his comrade, Albert Parson, believed trade unions must work towards ending capitalism rather than simply fighting for economic gains. They soon became leaders of the International Working People's Association in Chicago. Spies became the editor of the radical German-language newspaper, Arbeiter Zeitung. The workers' newspaper decried the incredible wealth of a few amidst the immense poverty and suffering workers faced. It became a rallying point for the 8-hour day campaign. Spies and other anarchist leaders, who would soon be known as the Haymarket Martyrs, became involved in organizing the May Day strike in 1886. Spies gave the impassioned speech at the McCormick Reaper Works. He witnessed the Chicago police shoot down 2 workers as they confronted scabs at the gate and organized a protest rally in response. The rally took place at the Haymarket Square the next evening. When the fateful bomb was thrown, Spies and his comrades were immediately arrested. They were tried and convicted for their political views. There was no evidence linking any of them to any crime. As he walked to the gallows, Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you are throttling today."
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
More terrible truth is that over 8,000 people over 8,000 people who were beloved members of their families are not coming back, and their deaths are an incalculable loss to their friends and their family, as well as our community.
That's Barbara Ferrer, Los Angeles County Health Director, who broke down on Wednesday as she recounted the latest tallies of coronavirus cases and deaths. At least 75 people in the most populous county in the United States, Los Angeles, died of complications from the coronavirus on Wednesday. That brings the county's total death toll to 8,075. And its average daily tally of COVID fatalities has increased by more than 250% in just over a month. The United States confirmed more than 3,000 deaths from COVID-19 on Wednesday. Yes, a single-day record. Total U.S. deaths now stand at nearly 290,000. Texas, Colorado, Illinois, and Pennsylvania each reported more than 200 new deaths on Wednesday alone. The continuing record-setting U.S. surge comes as federal regulators move closer to approving a vaccine made by Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech. A new poll from the Associated Press found that only about half of Americans are ready to get the 2-dose vaccine, with some suspicious about the rushed approval. Public health experts estimate 70% of the population must be vaccinated to reach herd immunity. The House on Wednesday approved a stopgap spending bill to keep the federal government funded for another week, sending it to the Senate with time to beat a Saturday deadline and avoid a shutdown. The legislation would keep the federal agencies funded until December 18th, providing more time to reach a deal on a larger bill that would keep the government running through September 30th. The Senate is expected to pass it. Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi have called for including coronavirus relief measures in the bill. Democratic leaders have backed a bipartisan $908 billion relief package. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin unveiled a $916 billion White House plan on Tuesday. I think this now qualifies as beating a dead horse. Donald Trump on Wednesday said that he would intervene in favor of a lawsuit filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, asking the Supreme Court to reverse the voting results in 4 states that Trump lost to President-elect Joe Biden. 17 other states have backed this long-shot lawsuit that is trying to overturn the outcome by giving Trump the electoral votes of the 4 key battleground states of Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Trump continues to falsely claim that he won those states and the election and maintains without evidence that Biden only won due to widespread ballot fraud. Trump didn't say how he planned to intervene in the case. Officials in those 4 states have all dismissed the lawsuit as a baseless and reckless assault on democracy. President-elect Joe Biden's son, Hunter, revealed in a statement Wednesday that he's under federal investigation for his, quote, tax affairs. The Federal Trade Commission and attorneys general from 46 states, the District of Columbia, and Guam filed long-expected lawsuits against Facebook Wednesday, accusing it of unfairly stifling competition. The lawsuits argue that Facebook's acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp were done illegally. They're asking the federal court to step in and possibly order Facebook to spin them off. The FTC is also pushing for Facebook to divest from WhatsApp and Instagram. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf is the latest government official to test positive for COVID-19. Wolf received the positive diagnosis during a routine test on Tuesday. He said he has no symptoms, he's feeling well, and said he'll be working remotely as he quarantines at home with his wife. And he reminded Pennsylvanians to wear a mask, stay home, and socially distance. Pennsylvania has seen case counts grow by more than 50% over the past few weeks, and ICU beds throughout the state are 80% full as well. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump's personal attorney, left the hospital on Wednesday after spending 3 nights there to receive treatment for COVID-19. Reporters who were on the scene report seeing the 76-year-old former mayor leave Georgetown University Hospital around 5 p.m. and flash a thumbs up to the cameras. Well, we've now learned that Giuliani, like others in Donald Trump's inner circle, received special treatment not available to any average citizen.
According to the New York Times, the treatment given to Mr. Trump's allies is raising alarms among medical ethicists, and state officials and health system administrators grapple with gut-wrenching decisions about which patients get antibodies in a system that can only be described as rationing. The treatments, an antibody developed by Eli Lilly and a cocktail of 2 antibodies developed by Regeneron, won emergency use authorization from the FDA last month for outpatients with mild to moderate disease who are at high risk for progressing to severe disease or even being hospitalized. Even some top officials at the FDA, both career employees and political employees, have privately expressed concern in recent months that people with connections to the White House appear to be getting access to the antibody treatments. The antibody treatments are so scarce that officials in Utah have developed a ranking system to determine who is most likely to benefit from the drugs, while Colorado is using a lottery system. This is disgusting.
And here we go again. A 23-year-old black man who was fatally shot outside of his home in Columbus, Ohio by a sheriff's deputy last week was the victim of homicide. That from a preliminary autopsy report. Casey Goodson died Friday from multiple gunshot wounds to his torso, according to a statement released Wednesday by the Franklin County Coroner's Office. The final report is expected in 12 to 14 weeks. In transition news, President-elect Joe Biden will nominate House Ways and Means Committee trade lawyer Katherine Tai as U.S. Trade Representative, and the progressive left approves. She'll be responsible for repairing economic ties with allies not happy with outgoing President Donald Trump's trade wars, while fulfilling his campaign pledge to stay tough on China. And finally, all 50 states and the District of Columbia have now certified their presidential election results. The next step in the Electoral College process comes on Monday with the meeting of the electors. Trump, of course, escalated his baseless claims of voter fraud Wednesday, asking the Supreme Court to intervene in a lawsuit seeking to invalidate millions of votes cast in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of only in the low 40s, so only a few more degrees until we get there. Mostly cloudy this morning with periods of showers starting late this morning. Winds will be light and variable, and we're expecting to get a bit more than 1/10 of an inch today, with another similar amount overnight, and then expecting about 1/4 of an inch tomorrow. Partly cloudy skies this evening, and will be overcast overnight with occasional rain showers, and then occasional rain in the afternoon tomorrow. Winds light and variable. And we're expecting, as I said, close to 1/4 inch of rain. And it looks like we're going to have rain every day for more than a week, topping out at a little more than 3/4 of an inch, and not less than about 1/10. So we'll see how that goes. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon stand steady at 4,017 with 37 deceased. That is the same number that was decreased from the weekend totals, and I have not found out why that is, and I am sure we're still getting cases. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Pollen is rated as none right outside the window here at the mothership. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 61 parts per million. Not good for those with breathing issues, though the daytime UV index is low at 1. And that's good news for those of you who have, well, skin issues. But still, slather on the SP30. Do it. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.13 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles. And relative humidity is at 89%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They do. London is 45 and cloudy. Paris is 44 and cloudy. Rome is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 26 with a light freezing rain. Kabul is 38 with its winter smoke. Hong Kong is 66 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 47 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and partly cloudy, and New York is 45 degrees with a bright sun making it a sunny, crisp day. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the AP bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Russian military today conducted sweeping drills of its strategic nuclear forces that featured several practice missile launches, and I should mention not today, late yesterday, Wednesday. The Defense Ministry said in a statement that the maneuvers included the test launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile from the Karelia nuclear submarine in the Barents Sea. As part of the drills, a ground-based intercontinental ballistic missile was also launched from the Plestisk facility in northwestern Russia, and Tu-160 and Tu-95 strategic bombers fired cruise missiles at test targets. Russia has expanded its military drills in recent years amid tensions with the West as relations plummeted to post-Cold War lows after Russia's 2014 annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. Of course, they were the first country to do that since Hitler did it and started World War II.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees, this time at Reuters, bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Now, do not tell me that there's something stinky in Denmark. No, a Russian citizen in Denmark has been charged with espionage for providing info about Danish energy technology to Russia, Danish authorities said yesterday, prompting a strongly worded response from Moscow. The Russian, whose name, age, and gender was not released, is suspected of providing information about, among other things, Danish energy technology to a Russian intelligence service for payment, the Danish prosecution service said in a statement. The Russian embassy in Copenhagen said it considered the actions by the Danish prosecutor a mistake and called for impartiality in the justice process. It said it hoped our compatriot would be acquitted in court and freed. The Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement characterizing the arrest and investigation as anti-Russian hysteria on the part of Copenhagen. Everything is anti-Russian to them. Everything. Such groundless accusations resemble a witch hunt, it said. No, it's an espionage hunt, and there's a rat that they're trying to get. The ministry added that it hoped justice will prevail. The case is connected to a larger investigation conducted by the Danish Security and Intelligence Service. The District Court of Aalborg will handle the case, but has yet to set a date for the proceedings, and adding that the Russian, who has been in custody since early July, faced possible imprisonment and then deportation. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and don't we deserve it? So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.